Shall we get started? Welcome back to the Sly Cooper Marathon. Now, last time we checked out Sly 2 Band of Thieves, which honestly changed the gameplay for the better. So when it came time to make the third game in the series, the PS3 was starting to come right around the corner, and Sucker Punch decided they would move on to a new IP with that system. And they wanted Sly to go out with one last bang. So in less than a year, we were given the last game in the series done by Sucker Punch, Sly 3, Honor Among Thieves. Now, a game being developed in less than a year is always a gamble. That either means that the team is really focused and can make a great product, or that the game was rushed and it suffers because of that. So where does Sly 3 fall in that? Let's find out. And once again, we're gonna check it out on the Sly collection, yada yada yada. Look, y'all already know how this goes. So let's get to it. The story takes place a year after Band of Thieves, where, thing happened to Bentley at the end of Sly 2 that caused him to be crippled and put into a wheelchair. Murray blames himself for it and goes on a new life quest, leaving the Cooper gang. Sometime later, Sly meets up with Jim McSweetie, who was the muscle of his father's gang, and he informs Sly of Kane Island and what lies on it, the Cooper Vault, which is a place where the Coopers have placed all their treasure and prized possessions and pass it down from generation to generation. Sly goes to inspect the island, but it's now taken over by Dr. M, an evil mad scientist monkey who has made the island into his own fortress and has been trying to break into the vault for years. Sly decides that he needs to assemble a group of world-class thieves in order to break into the vault. Now, the odd part of this is that the game begins at the mission where you break into the vault with your other teammates being unknown. Or, you know, you can just look through the binoculars and find them, kind of ruining the surprise. Sly gets captured by this thing, and his life starts to flash before his eyes on how he gained each gang member, leading a majority of the game to be a flashback. It's actually a pretty different setup compared to the first two games, but trust me, I'm going to talk about the plot a lot more later. Now, in terms of the presentation, most of it has remained unchanged from Band of Thieves, but considering the game was made in less than a year, I can understand that. Now, you do get a nice little intro showing the area before you begin each episode, which only happened at the beginning of the first chapter in Band of Thieves, so that's nice. You also get little alerts showing the day and time, which is kind of odd. I always thought these took place in one night. Considering each chapter is around 2 to 3 hours, it could realistically be done in one evening. But oh well, at least it's not a 50-hour-long night, am I right? Am I right? Anyway, the cutscenes at the beginning and end of chapters have a bit more movement in them, which makes them a bit more pleasing to the eye. Now for the voice acting, still great all around. All of the Cooper gang return yet again with Murray having a different direction on his voice, again. This time being a bit closer to his voice in the first game. It's pretty jarring considering I went from Sly 2 right to this, but I got used to it after the first 2 chapters. Carmelita though, entirely new voice, again. And this is probably the worst one, I feel. While she does have a bit more of an accent, it's the nasal voice. I'm sorry, but it's hard to take her seriously with it. She's supposed to be a police officer, yet she sounds like a little kid trying to talk tough to everyone.
Good work, man. For mercenaries, you fought with honor and distinction. I'm proud of you.
And it makes all of her scenes hilarious for all the wrong reasons. Other characters do a great job too, especially the villains as they ham up their performances a lot, and it's fantastic. Such as Don Octavia, who ends up singing most of his dialogue, and the Black Baron, who really nails the old-time war vet. Now as for the music, still really good. Doesn't match up to Band of Thieves soundtrack, but it's not too shabby. Now the only other thing I have to say is that the HD collection has a pretty big flaw. The widescreen bars don't go all the way across, unlike Sly 2. I noticed it a lot more, and it's kind of distracting. Especially on the pause screen. Oh, look at this, look at this! But overall, Sly 3 still looks great. It doesn't do much to stand out from Band of Thieves though. But oh, we have changes in the gameplay, alright. Now in terms of the actual mission-based structure of the game, that all remains the same from Sly 2. You still go on missions, perform a heist, and move on. That pretty much stays the same, though sadly the team seems to get wiped of all their powers that they earned in Band of Thieves, which is kind of annoying. Though Bentley does start with a throwable bomb, so there's that, I guess? Now, you are able to buy them later on in the game, but it's just kind of odd. In fact, most of the powers remain the same, which makes this even more weird. Now Sly and Murray control almost the exact same as before. Bentley is now in a wheelchair, which you think would make him more annoying to play as, but he gained even more mobility. Somehow. Mainly by getting an awesome triple jump that gets him out of a lot of jams. And don't worry, he still has all his gadgets. Everyone does learn some new moves along the way. Bentley gets a triple jump, grapple cam, and an alarm clock, which, yeah, he totally stole that from Sly. Murray gets a new ball form that lets him bounce around, and Sly gets a bunch of new combat options he can buy, as well as certain disguises for missions where he can blend in with guards around him and play a game of Simon Says to get past them. Murray and Bentley can also pickpocket now. Bentley by using a magnet, and Murray just shakes the treasure out of them. Inconspicuous! Also, when you collect treasure, you no longer have to sell it, as it's automatically added to your coin count. Now, sadly, you're gonna have to do pickpocketing a lot more than before, as fine art items have been removed, and you have to buy all your moves now as clue bottles are gone, which I'll talk about more later. But to make up for it, you now have the ability to replay every individual mission, as well as having Master Thief challenges, which return from the first game, but they can be time trials, not taking damage, not being seen, and stuff like that, or even be brand new missions altogether. This is a nice addition overall, and it's good for killing time when you have it. In the missions, I noticed 4 big changes as well. Save puzzles where you have to rotate a lock until it starts rumbling, buttons that you and a teammate have to press at the same time, painting puzzles where you need to find a lock number hidden somewhere in the picture, and dialogue selection where you need to pick the right choice in order to move on with a conversation. This mainly just gets you more dialogue overall, but you aren't punished for making a wrong choice, and for some reason they don't remember what you said beforehand. Hey! Your face sucks! Well, not like you're any better. Split 50-50? Alright, sure, I'll go with it. Wait, even after I insulted you? What do you mean? Now for the big change to the game. See, in Sly 1, you only played as Sly. In Sly 2, Bentley and Murray were added, bringing the total to 3. Sly 3 adds 5 new members, making a grand total of 8 characters. That's a big jump, don't you think? I think in terms of platformers, the only one I think that beats that number is Sonic Heroes with 12. We have a lot to go over, so let's get to it. First off, you now get to play as Carmelia, who acts like a third-person shooter. Kind of like Ratchet and Clank, but you're strafing the entire time. She also has a super jump that makes it easy to get around the area, and that's about it. Next up is the Guru, who is Murray's master on his new life quest, who can't talk correctly and doesn't even have subtitles for him. And instead, everybody just spits out what he said. Yeah, I wasn't a fan of that trope as a kid, I still don't like it. Anyway, he can't attack directly, but instead he can gain control of guards to crash into an area, or he can blend into the area around him. Next up is the TechWiz mouse known as Penelope, who Bentley meets on an online chat room, showing this. Looks legit! Anyway, she covers all the RC vehicles now, such as her chopper with a grapple hook and her RC car with a turret on it. Next up is the Panda King from the first game actually becoming an ally. Trust me, they'll explain that. He's pretty slow, but he can charge up a lot of fireworks and blast them all out at once. And prepare for lots and lots of enemies in his missions. And lastly, there's Dimitri, who becomes good because... reasons. Yeah, that one they don't explain as well. Anyway, you play him in this first-person snorkel shooting thing. They're not that fun, and almost no progress in the story happens because of them. What's odd though is that you only play as him 2 times in the whole game. Yay? There's also a 2-player mode, but it's pretty shallow. You basically can do 3 in the minigames against each other, or do cops and robbers mode. But the frame rate is terrible in it, and it honestly isn't that fun. But other than that, that's pretty much it for the gameplay. I mean, there are little things here and there, but mostly it takes the base of Band of Thieves and makes changes from there. So let's go over the changes I liked. Now, I do enjoy the little touches to the presentation, mainly the panning and zooming shots that give a better feel of the area that you're going into, and it's nice for new players to the game. I actually really enjoyed the painting puzzles that are in the game, as they add some good puzzle elements to there, and I feel it's a nice change of pace. And I will say, when this game shines, it really shines. Chapter 4, A Cold Alliance, is easily one of the best chapters in the whole series. You feel very thiefy, a great sense of urgency, and possibly the most evil villain in the whole series, General Sao. And you wanna know how evil he is? He kicked a puppy. Twice! And yep, he's a rooster. That's named General Sao. That's just amazing, okay? Just like this chapter. It's just awesome all around and such a fun chapter to play through. Boss fights are even better than before, and they have a lot more uniqueness than the first 2 games, Black Baron and General Sao easily being the 2 best. It's still fun to control the main 3, and it's fun to finally play as Carmelita. There's also a lot more conveniences, such as a money system where you don't have to sell stuff anymore, and being able to replay missions with extra challenges is a nice touch. And while there isn't as many extras as before, you do get an extra heist film, a tsunami playing with a code, and a music video for Dimitri. It's as amazing and weird as it sounds. And I will admit, there's a lot of variety in here. A lot more than the first 2 games for sure. But now let's get to the part where Sly 3 fans and me aren't exactly gonna, cooperate well. Okay guys, so there's actually a group of people that don't really like this game all that much, and sadly, I fall into that. These might sound nitpicky overall, but they all add up, trust me. First off, the story. I said I would go into more depth about it later, and now is the time. I have a lot of problems with the tones and direction of the plot. The first being the whole flashback deal. See, it's not the fact that it is a flashback, it's the way that the rest of the game goes around it. See, in this game, they try to make a lot more dramatic situations throughout, such as, is this person gonna make it out alive, or is this person dead, kinda deal. Here's the thing. Because it's a flashback and they show everyone for the heist at Kane Island at the beginning, you know they're gonna make it out of there just fine, so all the tension in these situations is lost, and it makes them lose their effect and make them overall rather dull. Same thing goes for Panda King and Dimitri joining the team. Because you've seen them already at the beginning of the game, the shock of them joining the team is lost and overall feels very flat. I also don't understand why they have the vault job as the opening level. Not only do you have all the problems that I mentioned, but Sly doesn't start off with all his powers here. And at the end, you just go into the flashback anyway. I feel it would make more sense to have the entire vault job at the end, that way it has a bigger impact. And it doesn't feel like it teaches new players anything about the game, considering you do a forced tutorial right before Chapter 1 anyway, so why not start the gameplay there instead? Not to mention there's no real gang or anything that you're going against, so every bad guy is on their own, so the chapters feel very disconnected and don't go into one another. The only difference is that you have a new gang member, so it doesn't come even close to matching the feeling that Sly 2's story gave off. And the whole vault job felt like it was becoming less and less important as the plot went on, which, considering that's what the game's leading up to, that's not a good thing. So overall, I feel that the story falls very flat, and it's incredibly disappointing after Sly 1 and especially 2. I honestly stopped caring about it after the first few chapters, which really sucks considering I was engaged the entire time with the first 2 game stories. Next, I'm not a fan with these characters and they feel incredibly tacked on and unnecessary. I did enjoy playing as Carmelita and a bit of Penelope, though I do wish she had bombs for the helicopter like in the last game, and the RC car can be kind of hard to control at points. But the other 3 I dread playing. Guru isn't fun, and honestly his jobs could just be replaced by Murray chucking enemies. Panda King is incredibly slow and charging shots take forever, and Dimitri is absolutely pointless and controls terribly. It feels like that they had to take stuff away from the main 3 to get the others somewhat of a point, and it really feels unnecessary considering we've seen what these 3 can do in Band of Thieves. Now, I'm okay with the removal of fine art as pickpocketing is easier to do, but I'm not a fan of removing the clue bottles. See, I like them because they gave you a reason to explore the map, and they were a nice way to reward you for going out of your way. With them gone, the maps feel very bare, and now there is no reason to explore them. The only point is to get from mission to mission, which honestly, if you're gonna do that, a menu could probably accomplish the same job. The next thing is that I don't like the overall theming and atmosphere that the game has. Now I've been wondering how do I describe this to people, and I think I got a formula down. So Sly 1 is a stealth or espionage type of film. Sly 2 is a heist film. Sly 3, straight up action film. I mean, look at the box art for all 3 games on the collection, and notice how different Sly 3 looks in general. This also translates into the game. The game overall has you being caught on purpose a lot more, and tries to make more of an action atmosphere, which I don't think blends well with the Sly atmosphere as he got through the other 2 games by not being seen. Like it or not, Sly's stealth and thieving was what made him stand out from other platformers, so not focusing on that makes the game overall feel a lot more generic. One of the things I noticed about the first 2 games is that you spent most of the time in the night or early morning, when a heist would normally happen. In Sly 3, about 70% of the game is taking place in broad daytime. I know this is small, but it did lead me to not feeling as thiefy as I did in the first 2 games. Not to mention, you make yourself seen a lot more than before and interacting straight up with the bad guys instead of staying low. And the minigames reflect this action atmosphere as you're not really thieving in them, and they ultimately start feeling like Sly 1 territory, where they're just there to be there. When you think of thieving, do you think of motorboats with guns, airplane fights, monster trucks? The answer is no. They don't feel like they blend well with the game series and feel incredibly forced. The pace of the game also feels much slower than the other 2 games, with a lot more tedious tasks. The big 3 are easily the dialogue selection, the Simon Says with the guards, and the sync button presses, which all feel like they drag the pace of the game down with them. Just have the player press the button quick and move on, and having to perform the Simon Says every time with the guards gets really annoying, especially when there are multiple guards in the area at once. The speech choices might be the worst offender of this though, as you're not punished for making wrong choices, so they just feel tacked on. I mean, you do get more dialogue because of this, but you could just have that dialogue in the regular cutscene. The only time you are punished is in the pirate swear-off, where you can't repeat anything that you've already used. See, if it was more like this, I would have enjoyed it a lot more and feel a lot more immersed in it. And lastly, I'm not a fan of many chapters in this game. The only ones I really enjoyed were chapters 1 and 4. 2 felt like absolute filler and probably has the lamest antagonist in the series. Chapter 3, you do thieving very infrequently and the chapter just goes on for way too long. And even the Cooper vault job, besides the mission in the vault, it feels rather bland and anticlimactic. And Chapter 5, easily my least favorite chapter in the series. See, in this chapter, you have pirates all around you, which makes you think you would do a lot more thieving itself, but it's probably the most action film-like chapter in the game. It pretty much has all the problems that I listed before about the atmosphere of this game, and it makes you travel in this awful ship controlling segment, and the battleship system, seriously, you play it for coins and that's it. Which is also pretty pointless because at this point you have all the powers that you need. And this ship part takes 2/3 of the whole chapter. That took forever. Look, Sly 3 isn't a bad game by any stretch of the imagination. In fact, it's still really fun. But with a sequel, you set your expectations to the previous game. And Sly 3 is just not as fun as Sly 2, mainly because a lot of the additions here took me away from the experience, while all the additions in Sly 2 enhanced it. And to be honest, most of the fun stuff here was just introduced in Sly 2, so I just can't rank it as high. I'm sorry, but the game just doesn't live up to the fun that the other 2 games had, and I just can't help but feel like this game doesn't hold up, especially when you've been playing them in order like I have. It lacks a compelling story, can't make up its mind on what it wants to be, and doesn't feel as engaging and fun as the other 2, making this my least favorite in the series. It's not fantastic like Sly 2, and it's not great like Sly 1. It's just good. And that's all I have to say about it. Don't get me wrong, it's still fun to play, but it was not on the level of the first 2 games, and I honestly felt just rather bored playing it for this review. I rarely ever find myself replaying this one, unlike the other 2 which I have replayed countless times. I still think that the game is worth playing for Sly fans, but that's the only people I think that are gonna get enjoyment out of this one. Trust me, if you wanna get into Sly, I wouldn't say this be the game to start off with. But even with the little flaws throughout, the Sly Cooper trilogy still is fantastic and comes recommended. It's a trilogy unlike any other, and it's still a ton of fun to this day. Oh yeah, in the collection they also had these little move minigames, but we don't talk about those. Whoa, wait, hold on. So when I beat the 3 games, this showed up on the collection screen. Okay, see what it's got. Thanks for watching, hopefully you've all enjoyed. Now if you're from the future and you're seeing this, click the video on the right for the Sly 4 review. Get it? Because Sly 4 is all about time travel and okay, never mind. Anyway, if you're into Splatoon, you can check out my Ink Help series on the left. If you want more updates on my stuff, follow me on Facebook and Twitter. And if you want to support the show directly, go to my Patreon. All the money from the Patreon goes back right into production, and I've been able to improve the show dramatically because of that. Which, by the way, thank you Soul Ninja Star for being the top patron on there. Thank you, dude. You are awesome. Anyway, I'll get to work on the next review. See you then.